have three speeches in our meeting this morning, and so let's get straight into it. Our first speaker is going to be Pat Caslin. Pat is speaking from the Pathway Manual's Persuasive Influence, Level 1, and it's his icebreaker. Yay! That's great, Pat. Always love to see icebreakers on the agenda, and what a treat, we've got two of them in store for us this morning. So to introduce the objectives, one minute. Pat has been a Toastmaster since October 2009. Since joining, he's given over 100 speeches and performed over 70 roles in 50 clubs. He's given a TED Talk, appeared in numerous podcasts and radio programs, been contest chair at the District 71 finals, come second in the District 71 International Speech Contest, and been a charter member of 2 clubs, completed 6 PATs, and Pat is a DTM. Pat's evaluator this morning is April Isham. April, would you like to introduce the objectives for Pat's speech, please?
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Good morning, all, or afternoon, evening. Pat wrote me this. April, thanks for agreeing to evaluate my icebreaker, my 7th one since becoming a Toastmaster in 2019. It's a canter through my work and family life to help listeners understand a little bit more about where I come from and some of the experiences that have shaped who I am. Comment on your impressions of the story and let me know how I could improve it, and that would be great. Thank you. And I believe our Toastmaster's already given way with the introduction. Thank you. Thank you,
April. So please all join me in welcoming Toastmaster Pat Caslin to the stage with a speech titled, Hello, I'm Pat Caslin. Hello, I'm Pat Caslin. Over to you, Toastmaster Pat.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you, April, for the introduction. Hello, I'm Pat Caslin. Many of you know me, but probably not very much. So let me just give you, as April said, a canter through some of my career, my background, and explain a little bit about how I think. I was born in Dublin. I'm a child of the 1960s, born in Dublin in Ireland, lived my life here, went to college, did well, joined KPMG, the chartered accounting firm after college, spent a year and a half with them in the States in San Jose, California, and came back to Dublin in their corporate finance department, where I was sent off to do a project in a food business about 80 miles north of the city. 2 months into that, the owner said to me, would you come and work for me? I'll double your salary. Now, what do you say to that when you're 27? You say, yes, please. But I was in contract with KPMG. So I went and I talked to the partner that I worked for, and I said, what do you think? I didn't look for this, but the offer has been made. And he said, I don't advise you, but I won't stop you either. You know, I think I'm on the way to the moon. I joined. Did great work for a couple of years. Then the business changed, and I probably didn't have the experience and got on the sharp end of a lot of very, very senior people, former chairman of one of the big banks in the country, former chairman of one of the biggest law practices in the country. And you know what, at 28 or 29, I wasn't able for that. You know, so I probably came off the worst of it. And it was a bruising experience. But in retrospect, when I look back on it, one that I probably should have learned a lot from then, but I didn't have somebody mentoring me. I didn't have somebody looking out for me. And I didn't have somebody that I could turn to that I trusted and said, how should I think about this? And it took me a long time to think about it and come around to understanding what it was. But the job, and I worked for 10 years, and I then got by another one. I spent 3.5 years there doing a different role, property development. And in that, I flowered. I left there to become chief executive of another property company. I had applied to be the finance director, but I didn't like the shape of the CEO that they were hiring. So I said to the guy, "Here, I'll do that job for you." He said, "All right." So I became the CEO. It was a nightmare. Spent a year there and left at the end of the year because I didn't feel that they were going to do what I thought was the right thing. They were going to drive the business down receivership year after I worked for myself.
Pat, we lost your audio. Pat, we lost your audio.
Okay, just give me a moment. My back?
Say a few more words.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
You know,
Great, thank you. Okay, let's go. Where was I? I started a property business in Poland. The property world collapsed globally in 2008 after Lehman's collapse, and with it, my business, and that was really, really bruising. I had 3 kids in school. I was paying school fees for them, and I said, what do I do now? Because there are no property companies left doing anything. So where's all the property? And I found, well, you know what? It's in the bank. So I went and I talked to all the banks and I said, I can help you because I have been that customer. I've been the one that is in difficulty. Got a job there, spent 5 years and left there in 2014. And I've been doing technology stuff since then. I have 3 kids, a wife. We're married 32 years. Kids are now 28, 27, and 23 today, actually, my youngest. One of them works for DocuSign, another one is a nurse in London, and the third one is in France doing a master's. I got MS 14 years ago, and that stopped me in my tracks and gave me time to think about what life is really about and what's important. And it also got me into speaking because I was asked to give a speech at a reunion of our BCom, and I used that as a platform to get other speaking opportunities. One of them turned out to be a TEDx talk, which I did in 2018. And speaking has given me a platform to reflect on life, to talk about things that are important to me, and I think to other people, and to develop a style of speaking that I think is valuable, where it's about content and it's not about theater. When I say I came around to see you, I don't have to gesture around. People understand around. And I think that Toastmasters does too much of the gesturing. You need to provide content. And that's something that I would like to see provided much more. I think the rules need to be rethought in terms of focus on the content rather than on the gestures. Definitely add variety to what you say so that people understand the emphasis that you bring through your speaking. I tend to gesture a lot when I'm in front of people, but less so when I'm on camera. I enjoy speaking. As you heard, I've given 100 speeches in the last 3 years. I've done 6 PATs. This is the start of my 7th. I'll do another one before the end of the summer because speaking gives me the opportunity to reflect and think about things. And I enjoy this club. I'm looking forward to giving more speeches, and I'm looking forward to contributing to the greater good of the club and to get to know everybody. So, hello, I'm Pat Caslin, Mr. Toastmaster.
thank you so much, Pat. Madam Timer, could we please have 1 minute for everyone to provide their feedback via chat to Pat? Thank you.
Make my comments. To begin the evaluations, I will call the evaluator number 1, April Isham. April, with you.
Thank you very much. I have to say, in assessing how this first speech went, that I just adored being able to canter around with you, Pat, as I got to know you. I would like to tell you that I jumped up behind you on this horse and really enjoyed the ride around. You were talking in this, not as being on top of the horse exactly, but nonetheless, I was going right along with you, from a home filled with books. My impression of you, Pat, is that you have probably read 79% of all those books behind you, that you are a very intellectual person. that you have lived your life with great intention to be in charge, on your game, in control, and that is the kind of man that I felt was exhibited as we cantered around. I was impressed when you were speaking about your work life, and you ran up against the old boys network at the ripe old age of 26, 27. I also have run into that old boys network in my career, and I know how bruising they can be. I have a solution for that for us, Pat, and for anyone else who is listening and may be concerned that they're living with some difficult old boys, or by this time of life, old girls networks. Find a mentor who knows the game but is not in it. A senior vice president in banking gave that to me when I was doing my undergraduate research. Best advice I've ever received. May I trade that for you all. And Pat, it didn't feel to me like you found your mentor amid all the job changes, you kept a bent for excelling as your mentor, it seemed to me. Property collapses, yeah, we all went through that, but how wise of you to head over to the banks and saying, hey, I can help you. I don't feel like that was the typical approach. So you shared quite a little bit of your life and who you are from a business-centric viewpoint. I think I would like to know you even more richly, Pat. And that is, you cantered, you briefly mentioned a wife, you briefly mentioned your children. But I don't know how you felt about your wife or your children. I know that you felt bruised from time to time and thrilled with your successes professionally from time to time, but I don't know how that family made you feel. Where is that side of who you are? I think would enrich in your presentation to us. There was a time when you had technical scritches going on, and I don't think you had a pet hamster acting up, but I think you did have a little trouble with microphone or whatever it was. That happens to us from time to time, but you handled it quite pleasantly, I felt. Like, okay, so this is happening, let's get on with it. I appreciate that example of how to handle that kind of a circumstance. You also, at one juncture, moved forward to see about correcting the problem, and then moved back. And I thought, oh, look at, the dude's got himself a cool kind of a chair, because it seemed to be automated or something. And then you informed us that you have MS to deal with. And I wanted you to know that I was watching for your gestures, but that chair made me give pause as I assessed what was going on.
April, thank you so much for your evaluation. We are short of time because
Sharon Giles. Sharon is delivering another icebreaker, this time from the motivational strategies path. Location, location, location. How much influence did or does your neighborhood have in determining your identity, your purpose? Today, Sharon is going to share the pros and cons of being an uptown girl. Now, Sharon's evaluator is Harold G. Harold, would you like to give the objectives for Sharon's speech, please?
Sharon is giving a speech. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. I'm just tuning in a little late. This will be from the motivational strategy level 1. It's an icebreaker, and most icebreaker speeches are almost identical in terms of telling us about yourself, or it could be heroic, but it's going to be like a biographical presentation. And she told me to look for such things as her eye movement gestures. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Harold. So please all join me in welcoming Toastmaster Sharon Giles with a speech titled Uptown Girl. Uptown Girl Toastmaster Sharon Giles.
What defines you? What gives you identity? Is it your education, your profession, or maybe it's where you live? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. My family and I lived on the far north side of Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood. Living in Uptown prepared me of what I would become. But living in the 4600 block of Winthrop Avenue defined me. It gave me identity and purpose. Let me explain. At an early age, I was what you would call a community activist. Reason being, I discovered that in 1928, the Chicago Uptown Association had passed a law that said Negroes could only live in the 4600 block of Winthrop Avenue. Well, Winthrop Avenue was a one-way street headed south. I had to assess the situation. Though I was not of voting age, I assisted in the writing and the distribution of flyers explaining the importance of voter registration. Yes, I wanted my community to get involved in what was happening around them. I joined various civil rights organizations. Congress of Racial Equality, I became a member of the NAACP. I spoke at block club meetings regarding the importance of staying abreast of local and world events. I even formed a sit-in group at the local Preskey's 5 and Dime. Now that was in sympathy for what was going on in the southern part of the United States. Yes, injustice was all around, but we in the Winthrop Avenue family, we lived quietly. We developed businesses that served our community. Contrary to popular representation of Black families as being pathological and criminal, I grew up in a very loving and caring community. Oh yes, we were a small town of Black folks living on one block in the middle of white Chicago. Our doors were rarely closed. Folks were always coming and going. Summertime was the best time. We had picnics, we had street parties, we visited Lincoln Park Zoo, we went to art centers, museums, and yes, we had celebrations for back to school. Oh yes, and if you were to look at any of my grammar school or high school pictures, you could easily spot me. I was probably the dark face. It was not, fellow Toastmasters, it was not any class that I took at Northwestern, nor any degree from Kendall College. It was the profound words of wisdom that prepared me for life in America as a Black woman. You see, the elders and the matriarchs always gave love and words of wisdom. My grandmother was an avid gardener. I helped her in many times in that garden. I pass on some words that I learned from her. One thing I tell my family and those that I mentor today, that sometimes to be a fragrant rose, you have to push your way up through the dirt. I joined Toastmasters Speechcraft in 1996 because my husband thought it was a great idea. He was right. I belong to 3 clubs today. I no longer live in Chicago. My husband is deceased, but I remain an active voice in my community. No matter where I live, I will continue to be a voice. and serve my community, because once an uptown girl, always an uptown girl. I'm sophisticated, I'm polished, and I am aware. Again, I asked you, what defines you? What gives you purpose, Mr. Toastmaster?
So continuing with the evaluations, I would like to call the evaluator number 2, Harold G. Mr. Harold, you have 2 to 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. You have heard a speech I consider it a work of art. It's titled Uptown Girl. She used bold stroke in starting her speech. What defines you? What gives you identity? What education? She says your location, where you grew up, literally molds you, educates you more than your college degree. While she used bold and bright colors, and she tells you why, she goes into the how. She talks about her neighborhood. She lived in a little island I describe as on 4600 block in northern Chicago. That block helped mold her character. She became an activist. She mentions all of these things are very nice. But one thing you notice when she's talking about herself, does she say she has a brother or a sister? Does she say she has a big family, small family, big home, small home? No, but she uses these bold strokes to have balance. She starts strong, and her ending is strong because she asks you the question again. She goes back to the introduction and tells you again, what could make this speech even more pleasing, more interesting? She could have reduced some of the topics and string those nuggets together by having a few pauses and pointing out how being a community activist made her strong, insightful, pointing out all the things that she did in that community. Her eye contact, I noticed, and it looked like it could have been improved. She was not focusing on the camera. And I was a little surprised because she's a wonderful speaker. She seemed to have memorized portions of her speech. Forget about that. Just go ahead. Be fluid. Make it up. I mean, that's the Harold G way. But anyway, that's like, I don't know, that's not your way. Anyway, you had a strong beginning, which is the why. You had a strong body. You told us examples of yourself, which is the how. And then you wound it up very nicely by coming back to the original question about how being an uptown girl had defined you and made you polished, sophisticated, and a wonderful person. Madam, Mr. General Evaluator.
Our third and final speaker this morning is Kate Mayon. Kate has always thought herself to be a self-learner. Has she changed her perspective on that or not? We're going to find out. Kate's evaluator this morning is Carol Jacoby. So Carol, would you like to introduce the objectives for Kate's speech, please? I'm sorry, before you do, I should mention Kate's speech is from Presentation Mastery Level 2 and it's Introduction to Toastmasters Mentoring. Carol, if you'd like to introduce the objectives, please.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Kate's speech, the purpose is to clearly define how Toastmasters envisions mentoring. And her purpose, her task is to write a presentation, a 5 to 7 minute speech about a time when she was a protege and share the impact and importance of having a mentor. Now, this is not to be a report on the content of the project, but her own experience. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Carol. So please join me in welcoming Toastmaster Kate Mayon with a speech titled Self-Learner. Self-Learner, Kate Mayon.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I am a self-learner. I hear lots of people saying that, especially young people. So did I when I was younger. I was proud that I could face challenges, overcome obstacles, and learn from my own experience. And I'm still proud of that. However, gaining life experience, I started to understand that I'm not totally a self-learner like I used to think that I was. And especially I realized that 3 years ago, when someone told to my daughter, "You speak so beautifully, and you are such a talented young lady. I suppose that your mom has a significant contribution in that." My daughter looked at him and said coolly, "Not really. I learned by myself." And she was 9. That was like a slap on my face. But in the same time, she made me think about myself, saying proudly so many times that I am a self-learner. We have mentors since the day we are born. We tend to follow someone, parents, teachers, etc. This is an innate action. We need someone to empower us and push us to follow our dreams. And that becomes an asset when we realize who our mentors were and be grateful to them. Dear Mr. Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and dear guests, I'm happy to share with you about 3 mentors in my life. The first mentor is the person who always has seen more talent and ability within me than I could see in myself. The second mentor is the person who helped me to see the hope inside myself. And the third mentor, I will speak a little bit later about him. Now about my first mentor. She is my teacher. She has been my mentor for more than 40 years. She was my first teacher in my first class, and she was our classroom coordinator until we graduated the secondary school. I have never seen a teacher like her being so much dedicated to her students during my lifetime. We were 30 students in the class, and she had an individual approach to each of us. She knew about our character and temperaments, weaknesses and strengths, desires and fears. She knew how to support and guide each of us towards our goals and desires. She grew us as the strongest class in the school, with the highest academic result out of many generations. But the most important, she built in confidence and trust in us. A few of us, including me, have become her mentees for our entire life. Whenever I speak with her, I feel energized, motivated, and confident that I will achieve my goals. The quote of Bob Proctor is about my teacher. A mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you. The second mentor that I'm lucky to have in my life. She is my godmother. When I made a significant change in my life, she became more than a godmother. She has become my mentor. She knew how to support and guide me in my new life. She has never told me how to do things, but she always helped me to understand things, find my way, and find myself. The quote most appropriate to my godmother is the quote of Oprah Winfrey. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. And that's my godmother. And now it's time to speak about the mentor that I would still like to have. The mentor who would guide me through my new path, public speaking. If you ask me now, what my expectations are from a mentor in Toastmasters, I might say, I don't know yet. I'm in the process of learning and discovering. And I haven't thought seriously about looking for a mentor before working on this mentorship project. However, I believe we'll find each other. The mentor-mentee relationship is a two-way street, and it will happen organically. Now, looking backwards, I see that my mentors haven't walked ahead of me to show me how they did it or how I should do that. Instead, they have walked alongside me to show me what I can do. And working on this speech, I called my teacher and my godmother and thanked them for guiding me in that way that made me think that I was a self-learner. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Carol Jacobi, evaluator number 3. Go ahead, Carol.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, and especially Kate. I love this speech, and what I loved the most were the twists. She suckered us in at the beginning, and I think we're all going, yeah, I'm a self-learner. I teach myself, and we're all celebrating our independence. And then she turns around and hits us with the view of the mentor that you're dissing by doing that. When her daughter said that, sort of dismissed her mentor, her daughter claimed her own accomplishments for herself and dismissed her mother's involvement and importance. So that really turned the whole picture around and said, wait a minute, I don't want to be a self-learner. I want to be grateful to the mentors. And then at that point, she took us from trying to be self-learners to saying, well, what about your mentors? Really good enthusiasm. She sucked us in at the beginning, even with the introduction, got us curious as to what she was going to be talking about, and told it all with such great enthusiasm. And one thing I like is the pauses. She gave us time to think. She said, I'm going to be talking about my 3 mentors. And she paused, so we knew that we were coming into hearing about the first mentor. And then when we got to the 3rd mentor, there was another twist. She didn't have a 3rd mentor. She was looking for her 3rd mentor. And so there was this reaching out to the community saying, find your mentor. So that was what I love the best, is all the twists in it. Got us involved the whole time, very interested. I loved her enthusiasm through the whole thing, the pauses that I mentioned, and how it was well organized. She talked about the 3 mentors, and you could hear about that. A couple things that I would suggest is maybe a little more emotion. When your daughter dismissed you, that, what did you feel? Let's help us feel that, because we want to be able to feel what that mentor felt when they were being dismissed. One other thing is hand motions. There were a couple cases where it was very effective when you talked about walk side by side, and something about two-way street, I think it was, where your hands were up where we could see them, and doing something very specific to what you were talking about. But there were other times where they were down at the bottom of the screen and kind of coming in and out, and that was distracting. So just be aware of that. But other than that, I loved it. I want to hear more about it, and I will be grateful to my mentors for helping me. And thanks for clarifying that for me. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
And so now we move from our prepared speeches to impromptu speaking. And to guide us through this portion of the meeting, we have our Toastmaster, aided by Toastmaster Scott Oliver. Scott is passionate about music, and I believe it's going to feature strongly in this table topic session. So I'm keen to find out what you've got in store for us. Scott, over to you.
Hello, Toastmasters. Toastmaster David, thank you so much. I'm very excited to introduce our conversation today. Of course, Table Topics is our opportunity to assess ourselves as impromptu speakers. Today, I'm going to give you a broad spectrum from which to draw, but with a narrow focus. Our friends, the Beatles, had 27 #1 hits. If you choose to be one of the volunteers to dive in and speak, well, good for you. You get to pick one of those hits yourself. Otherwise, I will assign you those hits. I have to get my picture up here so that I can see all of you. So you'll be given a title to one of the Beatles songs, and you can take it any direction you want to go. Fellow Toastmasters, let's do some speaking. Who wants to volunteer? Oh, Harold, I saw him clapping. Harold, you're up. Unmute yourself, please.
Mr. Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. I'm sorry, what was the topic about the Beatles?
Any Beatles #1 song. Would you like to give me one? Would you like me to give me one of their #1 songs?
Well, the Beatles had one, there's No Religion, there's no...
Yes, it's called, that song is Imagine.
Imagine, yes.
You're
That's
up and
one of
going.
my favorites, yes. You know, that song, encapsulates this. We like to be peaceful. We like to enjoy life. But that song, of course, steps on some people's feet because it says no religion. But I think it was powerful. Also, they seem to capture something in the British culture in terms of the loneliness, the people without relationships, and the rhythm, the music, the grasp of the times. But Imagine seems to goes to a certain core, a certain level. We can be rich, we can have influence, we can have a lot of things, but we look closer at our lives. Are we truly happy? And that song seems to touch a nerve. And it's so done in such a way that is so mesmerizing, so enjoyable to me. And I think that song has a classic quality to it. Long after I'm gone, people will be listening to that song. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Nice. Olga, I don't know you well enough. Oh, come, step forward. Be brave. No? Olga, unmute yourself. Are you there with us? Olga, I want to hold your hand.
I just was applauding Harold with his intervention. Thank you so much. It's my first time with all of you. I used to be Toastmasters Vice President on speaking of health in Indianapolis. Marjorie invited me to this meeting, and I feel very happy listening to all of you. Thank you.
All right, who can volunteer? All right, I'm going to volunteer you then. Darlene. Darlene, do you have a favorite Beatles song, or shall I pick one for you?
I have a favorite that I'd like to talk about, fellow Toastmasters. My favorite, and I'm not sure if the title is correctly said, but the one that says, "Get Back, Jojo." Well, anyway, that's my favorite. And the reason why is because they say, "Get back, Jojo," and they mention Tucson, Arizona. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. How many songs have Tucson, Arizona in it. So when I heard that, I was thinking, this is my song for life. And the connection is that Paul married Linda Eastman, and Linda Eastman of the Kodak family went to the University of Arizona. Now, I didn't go to the University of Arizona. I left to go to college out here. But every time I hear that song, I smile, because I don't think we'll ever hear another song with Tucson in it. So that would be my favorite song. My second favorite probably would be Michelle, because I like the ballad, but Get Back JoJo, that would be it for me. Back to you.
Who else would like to volunteer? Vincent, how about you? Would you like to pick a song?
Would be happy if you pick one for me.
You got it. How about Penny Lane?
Penny Lane.
Penny Lane.
Well, I don't know whether you folks have ever been to London, United Kingdom, Europe. Well, there is a Penny Lane in the centre of London, very close to Piccadilly Circus. And isn't it a lovely name? I mean, have you ever heard of a street in America called whatever, 10 Cents Lane? No. I think street names are very important. And as we had heard earlier, living in a certain neighborhood might condition your life. Imagine having lived on Penny Lane. Imagine you live on Penny Lane. How would people assess you if you had your mail address at number 10 Penny Lane? They would consider you, obviously, as a music lover. They would obviously connect you automatically to the Beatles. And even though you might not even like the music of the Beatles, you might not even want to listen to the word Beatles, you would still be associated because you live on that street. Consequently, we might want to go back into our past and even our current lives and look at the names of the streets we live on, the neighborhoods we live in, and how these neighborhoods reflect on us and how we are being perceived, and to use the word again, how we are being assessed by our fellow Toastmasters, about our friends, about our families. So take the opportunity, move to Penny Lane, London.
Nice. Daniel, would you like to take a swing? Unmute yourself and talk about your ticket to ride.
I'd be happy to. Ticket to Ride is a sprightly rocker that came fairly early in the Beatles' popularity and starts out, I think I'm gonna be sad. I think it's today. It sounds like the person isn't sad yet. It is one of those breakup songs. And rock thrives on first love songs and breakup songs, because somebody will break up with somebody in real life and they'll go and pick that song to play, or they'll fall in love and they'll pick that song to play. So I can imagine millions of teenagers breaking up with their first love and in their misery reaching for the 45 of Ticket to Ride, putting that little adapter in the middle of it, putting it on the turntable and hearing the bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum lead in and lead into, I think I'm going to be sad. I think it's today. It'd be nice if we could govern when we're going to be sad, when we're going to be happy. Until we can, all we can do is play songs that envision an ability to do so. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
John White, I am dying to hear about your experience on a yellow submarine. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I am unmuted. I should be muted because I hate following Daniel. I wish I had a ticket out of this meeting. Yellow Submarine. You know, I grew up in the 60s, but my formative years were the 70s. Is that a reference to hallucinogenic drugs?
It's a reference to whatever you want it to be, brother.
Let me just say this. I'm a little claustrophobic. I never served the country. If I were to, it could not be the Navy. Whenever I see these guys in these submarines, I just have an anxiety attack. So no matter what color you paint the submarine, I'm just not going to be on it. Where's the timer? Where is the timer? The DTM just basically said, give me a line. Is there a line I could call? Could Harold G finish it off for me? Could someone that knows about the Beatles? Yellow Submarine. I got to do more than that.
Oh, Lord. You're green.
No, I'm just going to sit here in the discomfort of the quiet of me suffering and have it as a community moment. Yellow Submarine. How about this? I don't like submarines, but if I'm to be involved in one, let's at least paint it my color. I want it to be a blue submarine. And perhaps that's a nice transition from Daniel's table topic. I'm done. Thank you for that, Scott. Don't ever do that again.
Wow, at the risk of doing it again, Zan, could you talk to us about All You Need Is Love?
I can talk to you about All You Need Is Love, and I'd like to do it in conjunction, if I may, with the opportunity that the earlier the earlier table topics participants had, which was to be able to choose their song.
All right.
So this will be in combination with the song that I would have chose. So All You Needed Love is Love and Eleanor Rigby. I'm going to tie them together in my table topic speech, because they are tied together for me. As I may have mentioned before in one of my speeches, because it has been a thing for me this year, I turned 50. So my tongue-in-cheek explanation of turning 50 has been, oh, I'm walking elegantly into my Mrs. Robinson years. But in reality, I'm on a slow slide into my Eleanor Rigby years, thanks in no part to quarantine. But I think I would have been turning into a bit of an Eleanor Rigby as a 50-year-old single woman anyway. I recently read I think it was in the New Yorker magazine, Paul McCartney had a wonderful article about his songs, and his Eleanor Rigby was all of the older women in his community that he loved. I believe that was he delivered newspapers to them and then became sort of a helper for them. He was maybe a Boy Scout or perhaps an English version of a Boy Scout, but go with me, it's a version of that. And when he aged out of that, he was still their helper and to all these older women that he loved. And I am an older woman who likes helping people walk their dogs across the street when they're not doing well, shovel snow when they're too old to shovel their front snow, all these sorts of things. But I don't feel like I have a sense of community around me. And when I recently asked somebody about how to get that community of when I will find my home, when I will have that sense of community around me, they said, keep doing what you're doing and you'll find your home. And in that endeavor, I continue to come to Toastmasters classes, meetings, to expand my horizons and find my tribe, and one day hopefully find my home. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Finally, I think we have time for one more, and I can't think of anybody better that's like an Energizer bunny than our friend Vicky Trabosh to talk about 8 days a week.
Mr. Table Topics Master, that's not what I'm talking about. Mr. Table Topics Master, I love you. Yeah. When I was a little girl, this is going wild, so I'm just warning everyone. When I was a little girl in the early 60s, my mother and father and brother and our friend, Mrs. Pushkarik, and her two boys were in the car. We were going to buy apples. And we were singing, I love you, yeah, 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 in the back seat. No seatbelts on, because who wore seatbelts? I guess they thought we could all die in an accident. I don't know. But in the early 60s, nobody was wearing a seatbelt. I am literally jumping up and down in my seat, singing, I love you, yeah, yeah, yeah. And unbeknownst to me, a giant bumblebee decided to fly under my cute little hiney. And I sat right on it and it stung me. I screamed so loud, my mother almost went off the road. Really hurt. Still hurts when I think about it. It's only over 60 years ago. I got home, I had a little welt on my hind tail, and this is where it gets really sweet. I was hurting. My dad, Mr. Papa, came home. My mom told him what happened. He wanted to see it, because who doesn't look at their little kids' hind tails? And I remember this like it was yesterday. He looked at it, showed all the love in the world, and leaned down and gently kissed my hiney, right on the little boo-boo. And you know what I knew at that moment? He loved me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mr. Table Topics Master.
What a great one to finish on. I think we're out of time. Thank you, everyone.
Continuing with the evaluation session. Are you enjoying this? If you are enjoying this meeting, you put your hands up in the air. You put your hands up in the air. All right, let's keep moving. And now, with our table topics evaluator, Madame Donna Caseborn. Go ahead, Donna.
May I say something to Donna, please? Donna, you have 2 to 3 minutes for the whole evaluation, okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Harold, I loved how you handled your particular Beatles song. You talked about influence and you brought that around on how influence can handle us. So we need to be aware of that. Darlene, I was having a hard time catching your particular record or song, so I didn't really get anything down on that, and I apologize. The third speaker was on Penny Lane, and yes, you were right about how street names are figured. I thought for sure you were going to say, if you live on Penny Lane, people are going to think you're poor because you live on Penny Lane. That, but it was a very nice topic to in how you spend it. Daniel, Ticket to Ride. You give a great analysis every time you give a answer a table topic question. That, and we all have had tickets to ride. That, so in challenging us to think about places that we have been, that was a great way to connect with the audience. John, Yellow Submarine. I, first of all, love that song, but I was intrigued when you changed it to what you wanted and that you would paint it blue. That speaks about you. So thank you on that. It's on the two songs and how you tied them together was right on target. That Eleanor Rigby and the other song, perfect. And I can't believe you're 50 years old. You don't look it. Vicky, 8 days a week. you added to that by sharing everything that has to be done in a week. And unless I missed something, I would have loved to see you spin it back to somebody else. Mr. General Evaluator.
Continuing with our grammarian, word of the day, and accounter, our president, Victoria Trabosh.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters. I'd like to assess our meeting from a grammarian standpoint. And I would assess that not many people used it. Marjorie, you pulled in 3 assesses right there at the end, assessments. Good job. I heard it once from Sharon, once from Vincent. April, you didn't use it, but cantered around should have been the word. Canter should have been the word today. Well done. What I want to focus on, because we don't have a lot of verbal glitches, ahs and ums, double clutches, 1 or 2, but that's not what Masters is about. Masters is about speaking memorably, and this is where you all really shined. Pat, whenever we say things that remind us of something or draw a picture, that's what anchors our speeches and our thoughts. The shape of the CEO. Speaking gives me the opportunity to reflect. Sharon, you use pathos, which is establishing the emotional connection. Winthrop Avenue family, 1 block in the middle of white Chicago. Then you also gave us great visuals and spoke about your grandmothers. Sometimes you spoke about your grandmother and then used the Oprah quote. Sometimes to be a fragrant rose, no, sorry. You used your grandmother's quote. Sometimes to be a fragrant rose, you have to push up through the dirt. What a visual. Those things are how we anchor our speeches. So well done. Kate, when you gave the Oprah quote, you created logos, which is your common ground, because we can all understand that. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. I would have loved you to repeat it. I had to go look it up because I couldn't remember it after you said it. Repeat those quotes that help us anchor what you say. Vincent, I loved how you said, have you ever heard in the United States or somewhere else, the land of a 10 cents or 1 cent lane? No, you really own that penny lane. And that really created the logos, the common ground between us. Daniel, the memorable phrases. It's one of those breakup songs. Rock thrives on love and breakup songs. And those were great visuals when you talked about, this is an age thing, but putting the little adapter on your 45 so it would play on your record player. Oh, you youngins, trust me, he's talking about something real. John, you had a community moment. You're going to call it something else when you get old, but that really created your emotional connection to us and your credibility, because we've all had them, and I really appreciated your authenticity. Zan, walking elegantly into my Mrs. Robinson role, but actually I'm turning into Eleanor Rigsby. Again, the only thing I'd say is if everyone doesn't know who Mrs. Robinson is, and if everyone doesn't know who Eleanor Rigsby is, some of that great metaphor may have been lost on some people. This was a meeting of memorable phrases. Another one, Harold G. used bold strokes. Harold, you used that twice. And then you said, used bold and bright colors. The repeat of a word is really powerful. This isn't part of your evaluation, but I'm gonna challenge you not to sit so close. You've got a really strong voice, and your voice actually cuts out if you're too loud, and that affects your presentation. Carol, she suckered us in. Man, you described so well how she took us through these ups and downs. Question, for everyone who's not an American, do you know what being suckered is? Do you know what a sucker punch is? That may have not made sense to some people internationally. And when we use a great term like that, because I wouldn't take it away, explain it when you're in an international audience. That means you were taken by surprise or something surprised you. Fellow Toastmasters, well done. And you have made my role as a grammarian a great honor. Mr. General Evaluator.
Okay, I see Scott Oliver approaching the camera.
Wow, I thought it was a great meeting. I think, if anything, one of the things I've learned over the years of being in Toastmasters is distractions can really knock you off your game. And so I really appreciate Vicky's point about Harold getting a little close to the camera and the sound. And Pat, that the moment when you had the sound problem, the grace with which you handled that was stunning. I would have been flustered and thrown off my game. And so those would be the two comments I would throw in. I thought the distractions were well handled, but also it's important that we fess up and point out to them. And so there you go. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for your comment, Scott. And David, any comment about the evaluators? What
yeah,
have done better?
Thanks, Jan. So I think there was great suggestions in all the evaluations. My only suggestion to Carol, who had plenty of suggestions, but they were all like, it was almost like you had to get them out at the end before your time ran out. I would maybe hold, you had plenty of commendations as well, and maybe hold one or two of them and kind of sandwich the constructive feedback with something positive to close it out with as well. But it was a great evaluation. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you so much, David. And Vicky, you raised your hand.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. This is for Donna as Table Topics Evaluator. A lot of people aren't familiar with that role. I've always done it. Scott and I were in a club in Portland that we always did it. Donna, I want you to concentrate on not repeating what people's speeches were and your reflections on them, but what they could have done better. When you have that many table topics, look for themes. What did we all do well that you saw? How did we use pauses? What could we have done better? Because often you'll see a general theme in table topics, and that will help everyone raise their game. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Vicky.
Jan, Marjorie?
Yeah, go ahead, Marjorie.
As a timer, I didn't request everyone that was speaking to pin the timer. This was my fail today, but I encourage the next timer to encourage all the members to pin the timer, to be seen and to be followed. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marjorie. Pat, go ahead. We have the time just for one more comment.
Thank you, Jan. What I really enjoyed about this meeting is that people opened up about themselves. They told us about things that had happened to them, things that were important to them, and they brought us into their lives. And that's the best part of what Toastmasters is about, because we hear things that people will share, and often we share things at Toastmasters that we wouldn't share with a lot of people. And this is a safe environment to do this, and we have created that in this club. And I think that is something that is really, really valuable and really important, and is respected by both the evaluators and on all the feedback. I think that's fantastic.
Yes, indeed, Pat. This is a great club, and I must say I have been away for 2 months, and this club is better than ever. So keep improving. Congratulations to you all. Now, finally, I will make my final comments as a general evaluator. The meeting was very meticulous, and we say, let's see, in business, when the machine is very well lubed or lubricated, this machine is working flawlessly. Congratulations to Lavinia, the Zoom master that pinned the evaluator with the speaker. This was very nice. I will make just a few comments very quickly. If you hear your name, pay attention. Pat, speaker Pat, the body posture. I would like to see you a little bit closer to the camera. Sharon, speaker Sharon, lightning. I would like to see you with a second lightning in your, so diminish the shadow that we see in the screen. See, a second point of lightning. Speaker Kate, the tone of voice. You can use the tone of voice to put more energy in the important part. Okay, Evaluator April. Evaluator April, this is the second time I see you on screen. The first time it was You made me a very good impression about your comments. Today you ran out of time, so my recommendation to you, go straight to the most important thing you want to talk about. After that, you talk about the other things, extra things. Evaluator Harold, I loved when you made the comment, coming back to the original question, how the Uptown Girl made you who you are, or something like that. Love that. And I love that speak. Evaluator Carol. Carol is a consultant, very experienced Toastmaster, great suggestions, good suggestions about emotions. This club is so easy to be the general evaluator. There is not much to talk about. So let's see. And that will be it. Now, back to our Toastmaster of the day, David Ryan.
Thank you, Jan. And before I'm going to go any further, I'm going to ask Vicky to launch the poll for the. Marjorie, you have a point?
Yes, we have only 4 minutes left.
Thank you, Marjorie.